All right, well, I think we'll get started tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming for the next in a series of comprehensive plan update discussions. This one is going to be focused on the environment and discussions of climate change as we start developing our local goals and policies. Kind of as a kickoff to this meeting, basically what we're going to be seeing is you'll have again a brief presentation that covers the existing comprehensive plan elements as it applies to regional guidelines on the environment, what our existing conditions look like in Kitsap County. Largely those existing conditions are going to be between 2016 and today. Planning for climate change. The state legislature has worked very hard on pushing climate change legislation. While that has not been approved, there is going to need to be some discussion at the local level, as climate change is something that is going to be affecting Kitsap County, as well as how do we address resiliency in our infrastructure. What is the county's role in protecting the environment and climate change? And then lastly, what the current 2016 comprehensive plan says about what we are supposed to be doing in the protection of the environment. This won't just be a presentation like the last couple of meetings. These will include breakout groups. Hopefully we have a few more people attend, otherwise that may be a breakout group, in which case we're going to run through some questions about how people feel about protection of certain elements of the environment, as well as certain elements of climate change that could come forward. Again, if people have particular technical issues regarding the Zoom, please contact Alex Jarrett at the email address you see down there. This isn't necessarily tech support for your computer at home. Can't really help that. This really is tech support for here and in this Zoom environment and the coming breakout groups. So with that, let's kind of go through and do our standard introductions to staff. So why don't we start with Kirby, who will be our main presenter tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Kirby Mesablu-Yobek. I work in the Department of Community Development as the Environmental Programs Planning Supervisor.
Mr. Rogers?
Hi, I'm Jim Rogers and I work in long-range planning. Prior to that, I did work in public works, transportation planning for about 15 years.
Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Shoemake. I'm a senior planner in the long-range division.
And I'm Eric Baker. I'm the Deputy County Administrator for Kitsap County and kind of your Master of Ceremonies for the evening. From there, we'll move on to the next slide. So this is kind of the precursor we give at the beginning of each meeting to explain that our comprehensive plan is one step, the local step, in a series of planning exercises. The first of which was the adoption of the Growth Management Act. That's a state statute that governs local jurisdictions planning. From there, we have a document called Vision 2050, which is adopted by the Puget Sound Regional Council. Kitsap County is a member, as well as its cities, as well as Snohomish, King, and Pierce counties. This is where existing or future population and employment targets are developed. And then we have the countywide planning policies, again, taking a step down from the region to the county. This is the county and its cities and ports and tribes. These countywide planning policies are how we kind of move through and provide consistent planning between the jurisdictions. Our various jurisdictional boundaries don't follow a lot of logical sense at times. We want to make sure that we're planning in a coordinated manner to avoid any kinds of inconsistencies. And then there's our comprehensive plan, which is our goals and policies that directly impact unincorporated residents in places like Silverdale, Kingston, Seaback, Holly, Hansville, all across the county. Next slide. So some of the GMA planning goals as it applies to tonight's topic, which again is going to be the environment and climate change, is we must protect the environment. So we're talking about wetlands, streams, geologic hazardous areas, frequently flooded areas, aquifer recharge areas, as well as our shorelines. This is all to enhance the state's quality of life. Kitsap County is the natural side of the Puget Sound. We really cherish our views, we cherish the trees, we cherish the various natural features that we get to live with every day. that is causing a certain amount of the growth coming to our community as people have discovered what we've always known. And then there's the protection of air quality, and water quantity. Air quality, we are quite blessed with some pretty good air, except for when the forest fires hit, due to the amount of water that we have located around the county. But water quality and quantity are particularly important. We do not have snowpacks. We do not have runoff coming from the mountains. We are dependent on our aquifers, which is deep in the ground, some of which under areas, and we need to protect them from potential hazardous uses. And that's governed by that state RCW down there that I'm certain everybody is going to right now to get more information. Next slide. So again, moving to Vision 2050, using GMA as a framework, many of the same types of goals and policies. Restore and protect natural systems, conserve habitat, especially salmon habitat and wildlife, improve water quality. That is, again, one of the key aspects for the entire region. Consider impacts of land use development and transportation at all levels of planning. All of these are interconnected, that you can't just focus on one without looking at the others at the same time. And all of those have an impact on our environment. Restore the health of Puget Sound. Part of that is salmon restoration, but other parts of that are other portions of the saltwater and freshwater marine ecosystems. And then reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That is something that we have a new report that's just come out recently about how greenhouse gas emissions are affecting Kitsap County. And there'll be lots of conversation of that in this, there'll be lots of conversation about that throughout this update. Next slide. Then we have the countywide planning policies. Hey, here's some similar themes. Reduce impacts to vulnerable populations, conserve and enhance natural resources, protect air quality, and water quantity, preserve and protect ESA listed species. We have 2 ESA listed species in Kitsap County. Those include summer chum and coho salmon. Coordinate watershed planning. Much like our jurisdictions, watersheds don't follow logical boundaries. They don't follow roadways. They don't follow jurisdictional boundaries. Those are things that we need to be able to plan in a coordinated manner, as all of those features all impact one another through water runoff, through tree canopy coverage, etc. And then addressing climate change. The reduction of impacts to vulnerable populations is something that is extremely important as we talk about our transportation system and where folks are living in our community, especially in the areas of air quality and water quality. Next slide. And from there, I believe I'm turning this over, thankfully, to Kirby.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks everyone for joining tonight. I will be covering the rest of the slides, mainly on existing conditions of our critical areas and natural systems, planning for climate change, the county's role, and then I'll provide an overview of the current 2016 Comprehensive Plan Environment chapter, because that will be we'll be updating that chapter during this current Comprehensive Plan update. So Kitsap County is approximately 258,400 acres in size, and it's surrounded by water, as you can see here on the map. This estimate in acres includes all the cities within the county. Within this area, we have about 560 miles of lowland streams. Like Eric said, we don't have snowpack, so these streams are fed by rainfall and aquifer recharge areas. These streams also include shorelines of the state, fish habitat, and non-fish habitat. This accounts for all streams within the cities as well. As you can see on the map, we cover the entire county. The stream buffers for these stream types constitute almost 29,000 acres within the county. This includes the buffer width as adopted in code, as well as the 15 feet setback as prescribed in code as well. There's about 32,600 acres of delineated wetland areas, including their associated buffers that are averaged out. There's also for water bodies, we have 5 acres of reservoir, 259 miles of marine shorelines, about 3.5 acres of gravel pits filled with water, and more than 3,000 acres of lakes and ponds. In addition, we have approximately 18,700 acres of hydric soils. Now, hydric soils include areas that have the potential to be classified as wetlands. There's also about 50,000 acres of areas considered as moderate geological hazards, like moderate slopes, seismic concerns, and erosion risks. There's also about 41,000 acres that are considered high geological hazards. These are unstable areas with steep slopes or other geological characteristics that make them highly unsuitable for development. Critical areas and natural systems within the county cover approximately 67% of the land. So this is just covering the existing conditions of the county, albeit it includes the cities within the county. I have a poll for you that I will ask Jared to pull with a survey question. What aspect of Kitsap County's natural environment are you most concerned about protecting? Maybe 10 more seconds, Jared, Alex. All right, we can end the poll. Oh. Thank you, Alex. So here you can see that protection of forests and fish and wildlife came out on top, and water quality with 5 out of 13, 38%. Thank you for completing that poll. Moving on to the next slide. Planning for climate change is a focus of the comprehensive plan update. The county recently completed 2 studies or assessments that provide fundamental information to help us plan for resilient communities and reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the local level. Kitsap County, we completed a climate change resiliency assessment in June of 2020 in partnership with the cities of Bremerton and Port Orchard. The study assesses and prioritizes risks to the county's residents, environment, economy, and infrastructures due to climate change. This study provides a basis for resiliency planning and information for various county agencies to prioritize climate change threats. This analysis provides a range of possibilities or possible impacts based on the probability of those happening, the timing, and the magnitude of that impact on public health, on safety, on the economy, water resources, and habitat. I want to highlight a few findings of the climate change resiliency assessment. Specifically, those that have a high magnitude of impacts that we are facing right now or very soon within the next 20 to 60 years. Climate change will impact public health, mainly by causing heat-related illnesses. Extreme weather events may exacerbate acute health impacts. Frontline communities that often face the first and worst impacts of climate change. That includes children, elderly folks, tribal communities, outdoor laborers, and those with chronic illnesses. These frontline communities are already experiencing climate-related health risks. Climate change will also impact our economy. Electricity and energy demand will rise, outdoor laborers will be impacted, and healthcare costs are expected to increase. Property values and public infrastructure will be impacted as well. Climate change will likely limit the access to sites and opportunities to hold traditional, ceremonial, and harvesting opportunities for tribal communities. Climate change will likely lead to increased flooding for low-lying coastal areas, which in turn will affect homes, it will affect businesses, food systems, and of course, our transportation infrastructure and other infrastructures along the shoreline. Land use and development patterns may further exacerbate flooding and heat waves. We also know that climate change will cause storm surges, coastal flooding, landslides, and bluff erosions, especially in those geologic hazard areas. Climate change impacts include increased temperatures, sea level rise, and decline in summer rain, which will have a huge impact on our water resources, as well as freshwater and aquatic habitats. Although Kitsap County is outside of the high fire risk area, so we're kind of in a low risk fire area, we still get the smoke from all the wildfires nearby, as you could probably experience in the last couple of weeks. All right, Alex, I have another poll question for everyone. What impacts of climate change are you most concerned about in Kitsap County? Maybe 10 more seconds, Alex. All right, you can end the poll. Thanks everyone for participating. It looks like extreme weather events followed by freshwater availability and fire risk are probably the highest concerns of climate change you have. Thank you for completing that. Another important study completed recently in last month is the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory and Analysis Project. This project completed a geographic inventory of different sectors, including transportation, building energy, solid waste and wastewater, refrigerants, land use, which includes agriculture and tree cover loss, and sequestration. Data collected for this study were based on year 2019. From this study, we know that almost half of the greenhouse gas emissions in Kitsap County come from electricity and natural gas, mainly used for residential and commercial buildings. We know that transportation contributes almost 30% of greenhouse gas emissions, predominantly coming from passenger vehicles. Land use activities, mainly from tree cover loss, contributed 17% of our greenhouse gas emissions in 2019. So in 2019, the total greenhouse gas emissions was 3.2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. This bar graph shows a comparison of the 2015 and 2009, between 2015 and 2019 emissions data. You can see that sources of greenhouse gas from the built environment in blue and land use activity in orange increased. However, emissions from transportation, you can see that in green, decreased a little bit. So we did better in transportation, but built environment and land use, mainly from tree loss, contributed to a lot of greenhouse gas emissions in 2019. This graphic highlights the main drivers of emissions increase, which are land use, more fossil fuel-based electricity, growing population, and colder winters. Some notable drivers of emissions reduction include improved vehicle efficiency, which you could probably see the decrease in transportation contributing emissions, a decreased residential energy use per home, decreased commercial use per job, or decreased commercial energy use per job, and decreased waste generation. I have another poll question for all of you. How important is addressing climate change over the next 20 years at a local level? You can end the poll in 5 seconds, Alex. All right, thanks everyone. It looks like it's the most important and very important. Thank you for participating. Moving on to the next slide. So what is the county's role in environment and climate change? The county is responsible for ensuring that protected and functioning natural environment that provides a high quality of life for the people that live here and work here in Kitsap County. This is done through the development of the environment chapter of the comp plan and through development regulations, including the critical areas ordinance, the shoreline master program, and stormwater drainage code that's consistent with state guidelines and applicable to our local conditions. For the comp plan update, the county is planning to develop policies and strategies to provide direction towards climate change resiliency. And the plan is to incorporate these policies into the different elements of the comp plan instead of having a separate chapter. The county also provides programs to incentivize the protection of critical areas, critical habitat, and restore our natural systems and shorelines. Some of these programs include open space program, which allows property owners to have their open space, farm, ag land, and timberlands valued at their current use rather than their highest and best use. We also have the Shore-Friendly Kitsap program, which provides incentives to marine waterfront landowners to restore their beaches back to its natural form through the removal of hard armor. We also have the Conservation Futures program, which supports the acquisition of open space, recreational parks, natural areas, and forests. We have the Clean Water Kitsap program, which is a multi-agency partnership created to reduce flooding, to prevent pollution, and restore fish habitats through stormwater management activities. The county also coordinates salmon recovery lead entities and Puget Sound recovery efforts in West Sound and participates in the Hood Canal Coordinating Council's lead entity and ecosystem recovery work. I want to provide an overview of the current 2016 Comprehensive Plan Environment chapter because this is what we'll be focusing our update on in the next year or so. So the environment chapter begins by providing some guiding directives, which lists a set of directions or path forward in how to protect and recover our natural systems and the services that those systems provide. The guiding directives include protection of our environment, preservation of salmon and salmon habitat, participation in Puget Sound recovery, implementation of the water as a resource policy, protection of groundwater resources, and working with tribes to protect and recover the natural environment and protect treaty rights. The environment chapter also includes a set of goals and policies. Goals include formally treating natural environments, including our forest land, shorelines, freshwater systems, intact ecosystems, as essential assets that is planned for and managed to meet the needs of our current and future generations. The second goal is to coordinate with internal and external partners on natural environment management and recovery. And the third goal is to use incentive-based, is to reduce the risk of damage to life, property, and natural environment through regulatory and incentive-based approaches, specifically in land use, transportation, and development programs. The fourth goal is to support the first three goals, providing opportunities for stewardship, education, and public dialogue regarding the management and protection of the natural environment. Under each of these goals, there are a number of policies that provide more guidelines for how to reach or achieve each goal. Lastly, the environment chapter includes a set of strategies that provide specific direction on how to implement each policy. Some strategies that I'll highlight tonight include developing a framework or program to evaluate ecosystem services. Another is to ensure first consideration is given to natural environment functions when in planning and review. Another is to comply with flood and environmental regulation requirements, usually through FEMA, and establish a monitoring program to evaluate the changes to our natural environment. And lastly, to coordinate on conservation and restoration strategies. So those are kind of the 3 or 4 main sections of our environment chapter of the comprehensive plan. Again, I will now turn it over to Alex. We will be going into separate breakout groups. We have a set of questions that we will ask you. Just a reminder that we'll all be selected randomly into each group. How many folks do we have, Alex?
I believe we have 21 that includes staff. So I'm going to do 2 breakout rooms.
Okay, good. Thank you. After the breakout rooms, we'll come back to the room and maybe at 7:15 and do a report out of the ideas and issues that were discussed in each group.
Okay, breakout rooms will be set for 45 minutes.
Perfect.
Okay, here we go. Commissioner Gelder, did it give you the option to join a breakout room?
Yes, but I've opted to not go because I'd rather hear the report out than sort of stymie the conversation.
Okay, just wanted to make sure you had been given the option.
Yes, I was. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we also
Randall?
have Mr. King. Mr. King, did you need any assistance? Randall King, I see that you're still in the main room. Do you need assistance to get to a breakout room, or would you rather stay here?
Thanks.
All right, so on our first question, how do you interact with Kitsap's natural environment, and what do you value most about the natural environment in Kitsap County? Interactions were running, hiking, parks, walking dogs, trails, kayaking, swimming, scouting, wildlife viewing, biking, clamming, fishing, and educational and cultural interactions. The values, value of darkness when there's light pollution around, off-leash dog park areas, water resources, kayaking, the accessibility to the environment, interacting with nature, urban forests, a lack of sprawl, and provides a place to live. Second question on Kitsap County provides incentives through various programs, including the open space program and others. Are you familiar with these programs, and what other incentives could the county provide to promote protection and restoration of natural systems and the environment? Some were familiar with some of the programs, most were not. So some incentives, just kind of something to preserve trees. How successful have these current incentives been? So, looking at their success in the past. We need to increase promotion of these incentives so that to get the word out. Green water infrastructure, reducing light pollution, and use parking lots as potential solar panel farms, for lack of a better word. Which environmental features, wetlands, streams, shorelines, aquifers, etc., is most impacted by growth and new development? Number one answer was aquifers and forests as sequestration, and trees, water issues, how the environmental systems interact and connect with each other underground was also most important as we develop. How can Kitsap better protect and enhance habitat for salmon and other ESA listed species while still accommodating the estimated growth? Focus on infill and density before new development, and stormwater runoff treatment, education of public, existing, and new community members. Make sure people are aware of their collective responsibility and make better choices that have less impact. Expand protections to include species of concern, and not just ESA listed species, but species of concern. And as regulation is a component of our housing affordability issues, should there be different goals in protection of environmental features in urban versus rural areas? Basically, the answer for the group was no, that protection of environment is important in both rural and urban. Need to find a way to redevelop existing footprints to be more environmentally friendly. The question was a bit abstract, and some examples to think about what might have been a little easier to talk about this one. But explore new ideas and increase affordable housing without harming the environment. Question 6, many of our historic roadways are along shorelines. How do we plan for those impacts to sea level rise to roadways? Don't use bulkheads. Make roads usable to walkers and bikers, and maybe design roadways that can better handle the changing conditions. Increased density in our existing neighborhoods is a strategy in combating climate change through reduction in traffic. Are there concerns about increased density in residential neighborhoods? And if so, what are they? Need to balance increased density with added green space, and active transportation options need to be improved, and develop less car-centric living. A mix of uses, shopping, recreation, such as that. And we need jobs where people live to reduce trips. And we need to educate people on the benefits of higher density and the resilience of building community, making urban living more desirable. And the last question we got answers for, I think, was transportation is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. What can the county do to encourage using transit, non-motorized and low emission vehicles? Increase frequency of transit, better bike and walking protected amenities, and better linkages between modes, like between bus, ferry, or bike. So I think, unless I missed something critical there, Melissa, let me know. I think that's the gist of it.
Sounds like all the hot points.
Thank you, Jim. Eric, do you want to go?
Sure, I'll kind of run through what we have. On the question number one, how do you interact with Kitsap's natural environment? Our group was very attached to the environment, especially in the area of our parks. They live amongst nature. They choose to live both in their homes, but also in walks through natural spaces along shorelines. Again, the natural environment brings people great joy, and is one of the big parts of living in Kitsap County. Number two was Kitsap provides incentives through various programs. What other incentives can the county be offering? There were a lot of questions about what kind of incentives do we currently have in place. We brought up the performance-based development that requires a certain amount of open space so developers can be a little more context sensitive. But in general, stormwater and development needs to be more environmentally sensitive. It needs to work around nature, not the other way around. Shore friendly was seemed to be the only program that people knew about. There's also concerns about differences in regulations between the county and other cities, and exactly what kind of conversations are being had for the protection of the environment and climate change. The city of Port Orchard was utilized as one of the examples. New development should be providing open spaces to avoid heat pockets, and trees should be maintained in development, and if necessary, regulations need to be in place that make these types of things happen. Number three, which environmental feature, wetland streams, are most impacted by growth? Generally, the answer on that one is pretty much all of them. However, tree canopy is the one that got highlighted most. The maintenance of trees, whether it be along creeks or streams, just the maintenance of them in general, helps with the urban landscape, and keeps things from being just pretty much one big paved area with heat and temperature differences and other impacts to the environment. Number four, which is how can Kitsap better protect and enhance salmon habitat and other salmon streams? Again, it kind of went back to the development. It was an example was laid out about someone who was living in Switzerland, and that they made sure that development was all in place. All the necessary elements were there before they start allowing people to move into it. They're recommending more of that kind of master plan nature of development. Slow growth was another thing that there wasn't we don't necessarily need to take everybody who wants to be here, was another comment, but mainly we need to ensure that the critical areas are protected and that we have an integrated set of roads, bike lanes, pedestrian amenities, and again, all working around nature, not the other way around. Number five is the housing affordability question. people wanted greater protection in the rural area, but they definitely did not want to diminish the protections in the urban areas. The environment should not, protection of the environment should not be lessened. There's a feeling that there's a lack of enforcement, that there's a number of exceptions that are allowed to critical area regulations now that have allowed people to build too close to wetlands, too close to streams, and that type of thing needs to stop if we truly want to protect the environment. Many of our historic roadways are along shorelines. How should Kitsap work with those in the future? There's some discussion about how those roadways largely need to be pulled back in a lot of those areas, restored in a lot of ways. Let me make sure I get these lined up here properly. Oh, there we are. Also utilize other more innovative ways of treating stormwater before it goes into our waterways, whether it be streams or whether it be the shorelines. Just don't let it run into the ditch and then run into the shoreline. Number 7 was increasing density in our existing neighborhoods. Are there concerns about increased density? Again, very much like the other group, very important for folks to be able to walk to and from where they live and where they work. So have housing closer to job and shopping opportunities. And this is really where the walkability started to come in very, very heavily. It was about how Kitsap County needs to have bike lanes. They need to have wider shoulders. They need to have cost-effective trail systems that have the ability for people to get to and from places while protecting the environment. That will help keep density in a tighter configuration, yet also acknowledge nature while also keep getting people out of their vehicles. And then last but not least, we got to number 8, just like everyone else did. And again, there was the need for more bike facilities. There were certain roadways that were named. Lake Flora were points of concern. Lincoln Road in North Kitsap, where there are bike amenities, and then when the city ends, it turns into a shoulder. The shoulders are not in good condition. More just dedicated bike lanes along our roadways were things that people think would increase the use of bicycles in and around our community and throughout our rural areas. Kirby, is there anything that I might have missed? I am possibly not the best note taker in the world, so.
I think you covered it really well, Eric. Thank you so much. Before everybody leaves, I just want to make sure you have a link to the comprehensive plan 2044 comprehensive plan update webpage. If you want to reach out to the comprehensive plan update team, you can email compplan@kitsap.gov or call Kitsap 1 at 360-337-5777. Again, thank you all so much for participating tonight. The meeting summary, the meeting notes, the presentation, and the recording will be uploaded to the Comp Plan website if you want to review that again. And please tell your friends to come to the next meeting. Eric, what's the focus on the next meeting in 2 weeks?
Going to say that our next meeting is the Silverdale Regional Center. Jim, is that correct? So we are going to be having a focus on the Silverdale area and how we can better turn the downtown into a 24/7 community where people are living, shopping, and working all within the same area versus driving in, shopping, going home, again, having impacts on our environment and increases in greenhouse gas emissions.
And that's not in 2 weeks. That's next Wednesday, the 19th.
Yep.
Next Wednesday, not 2 weeks.
Please visit the county webpage for the Zoom link and the specific date and time.
All right, thanks everyone.